I want to go home. Fozzie, called Kermit. I have great news. Fozzie stopped bouncing his basketball to look at his best friend in the world. What's the great news, Kermit? He asked. Well, said Kermit, since you're coming over to my house to play with my new knock hockey set after school, I asked my parents if you could stay for dinner. Great, said Fozzie. He threw the ball and made a basket. What are you having? Spaghetti, said Kermit. And that's not all. I figured that since there's no school tomorrow, maybe you could sleep over. So I asked my parents that too, and they said yes. You can sleep over. Said Fozzie. He dropped the ball. Fozzie had never been on a sleepover before, except at his grandmother's house. He was excited, but he was also something else, scared. After school, he went home and packed his overnight bag. And as he packed, he had a little talk with himself. What if I get lonesome? He asked himself. I'll only be right next door, he told himself. What if I get scared in the middle of the night? He asked himself. I can always come home, he told himself. His dad was reading the newspaper in the kitchen. Well, Pop, I'm all packed, said Fozzie. So you are, said his dad. All ready for your sleepover? All ready, said Fozzie. Then he stood there for a minute. Pop, he said, what if I get lonesome? You'll only be right next door, said his dad. And, Pop, said Fozzie, what if I get scared in the middle of the night? You can always come home, said Pop. Right, said Fozzie. Fozzie and Kermit played knock hockey for a long time in Kermit's room. Then they played cards. Then they jumped in a pile of leaves. Then they helped Kermit's mom make dinner. At dinner, Kermit's family didn't tell jokes the way Fozzie's family did. They didn't play funny games or tell funny stories either. They just told each other what they'd done all day. Fozzie looked into his plate of spaghetti. What are all these little brown things? He asked politely. They're mushrooms, dear, said Kermit's mom. Mushrooms? Ugh! Horrible, icky, slippery mushrooms! Fozzie wanted to run out of the room with his hand clapped over his mouth, but he knew it wouldn't be polite. At home, his parents never served mushrooms. Carefully, Fozzie picked out all the mushrooms and put them in a little pile on the side of his plate. After dinner, Fozzie and Kermit helped clean up. Kermit's dad washed and Fozzie dried. Fozzie picked up a wet dish. It slipped right out of his hands, crashed to the floor, and lay there in 100 pieces. It's okay, Fozzie, said Kermit. Don't worry about it. But Fozzie felt horrible, horrible, horrible. The two of them played checkers for a while in Kermit's room. It was fun, but Fozzie still felt bad about the dish. Don't feel bad, Fozzie, said Kermit. I break things all the time. Yes, but this is your house, said Fozzie. It's different. Kermit and Fozzie put on their pajamas and brushed their teeth. Kermit's mom had made up Fozzie's bed on the floor. It was a sleeping bag on an air mattress. Fozzie felt his pillow. It was kind of flat, not fluffy like his pillow at home. You could go home and get your pillow, suggested Kermit. But Fozzie thought that would make him feel pretty silly. It's all right, he said. I'll be okay with this one. At last it was bedtime. Fozzie was excited. He was really having a sleepover at Kermit's house. What do you do for bedtime? Asked Fozzie. I read for a while and then I turn off my light, said Kermit. Doesn't your dad tell you a good night joke? Asked Fozzie. Nope, said Kermit. Doesn't your mom read you a good night story? Asked Fozzie. Not anymore, said Kermit. Fozzie felt his throat beginning to tighten up. No good night joke, no good night story, and no good night hugs and kisses either. This will be okay, said Fozzie to himself with determination. This will be okay. This will really be okay. They talked for a while, and then they turned off the light. There was a big scary shape on the ceiling. Oh, that's just the shadow of my hat rack, explained Kermit. This will be okay, whispered Fozzie to himself. Fozzie lay in his sleeping bag for a while, looking at the ceiling. He felt lonely. He felt homesick. He felt embarrassed to be feeling lonely and homesick. In another few minutes, a big tear rolled down his cheek. This won't be okay, he said to himself. Kermit, he whispered. Kermit, are you awake? Sort of, said Kermit. Kermit, said Fozzie, I'm lonely and homesick. A lot? Asked Kermit. A lot, said Fozzie. Kermit turned on the light. But my house is nice, said Kermit. It's just like your house. It's nice, said Fozzie, but it's not my house. I miss my parents. But they're right next door, said Kermit. Fozzie could tell that Kermit was trying, but he just didn't understand. I want to go home, Kermit, said Fozzie. Kermit's parents really tried to help Fozzie feel less embarrassed. This happened to me when I was your age, said Kermit's dad. Kermit's mom called up Fozzie's mom and said that Fozzie was coming home. I have an idea, said Kermit, as Fozzie was packing his bag. Maybe I can come and sleep at your house. Then we can still have our sleepover. And you wouldn't get lonely and homesick at my house, said Fozzie. Me? Never, said Kermit. All the parents liked the idea, so Kermit packed his bag and off they went. At Fozzie's house, Fozzie's mom had made up a bed for Kermit. She had piled up lots of blankets and quilts on Fozzie's floor. Like the princess and the pea, she explained. Kermit tested it out. How's it feel? Asked Fozzie. A little hard, said Kermit, but I'll be okay. They talked for a little while longer and then turned out the light. Fozzie, said Kermit. Yes, Kermit, said Fozzie, snuggled happily in his bed. Fozzie, what's that scary shape hanging on your wall? Asked Kermit. That's just my rubber chicken collection, said Fozzie. Oh, said Kermit. It was quiet for a few minutes. Fozzie, said Kermit. Fozzie, are you awake? Kind of, said Fozzie. It's very dark in here, said Kermit. Do you ever sleep with your door open? Fozzie thought Kermit's voice sounded a little funny. I don't usually, he said. Then he turned on the lamp. Are you okay, Kermit? There was one small tear in the corner of Kermit's eye. I'm lonely and homesick, admitted Kermit. A lot? Asked Fozzie. A lot, said Kermit. So Kermit packed up his bag while Fozzie's pop called Kermit's mom. Don't be embarrassed about being homesick, said Fozzie's mom, who knew Kermit very, very well. Everybody feels that way sometimes. There'll be plenty of time for sleepovers with Fozzie when you both get a little older. Thanks, said Kermit shyly. He felt better. I have an idea, said Fozzie. He went into the kitchen, and Kermit could hear him rummaging around in there. When he came back, Fozzie had 2 big paper cups and a long piece of string. He poked a hole in the bottom of each cup, put an end of the string through each hole, and then knotted the ends. "There," he said, "now we can still have our sleepover." Then he walked Kermit home. Finally, it was really bedtime. Kermit sat up in his bed. With his shade open, he could see right into Fozzie's bedroom. Fozzie pushed aside his curtains so he could see Kermit better. The paper cup telephone was all set up between the houses. "Can you hear me?" shouted Fozzie into his paper cup. "Pretty well," Kermit shouted back. "This is turning out to be a good sleepover, isn't it?" shouted Fozzie. "The best!" yelled Kermit. "Well, good night, Kermit," said Fozzie. "Sleep well." "Don't let the bedbugs bite, Fozzie," said Kermit. They waved at each other. Then they turned out their lights, went to sleep, and had good dreams all night. There's no place like home. There was no doubt about it. Wherever Kanga went, Roo went too. Every day since he was a little baby, Roo had hidden in Kanga's warm, snuggly pouch as she hopped through the forest. It was a nice way to travel, especially if you wanted to nap along the way. But Roo thought he was too big for that now. He wanted to go places on his own, not just where his mama took him. As Roo sat under a tree thinking of where he might want to go, a small brown speck came spinning by. Right behind it was Rabbit, who looked as if he might have been chasing the speck for some time. "Hello, Rabbit," said Roo. "Why are you chasing that speck?" "It's not a speck," gasped Rabbit, stopping to catch his breath. "It's a maple seed." Soon Rabbit caught up with the seed and captured it in his cupped hands. Then he showed it to Roo. "Why was it flying through the air?" Roo asked. "I thought seeds live in the ground." "They do," said Rabbit, "but sometimes they take a little trip first." Since Roo was thinking about taking a little trip of his own, he wanted to know more. "Come on, Roo," said Rabbit. "I'll show you my seed collection." When they got to Rabbit's garden, Rabbit brought out the big old wooden box where he kept his collection. "Do all seeds fly when they take a trip?" Roo wanted to know. "Nope, but these do," explained Rabbit, taking out a white fuzzy dandelion. "Go ahead, Roo, blow on it." Roo puffed out his cheeks and took a deep breath. When he blew on the dandelion, the tiny seeds floated off. Next, Rabbit took out a great big coconut. "That can't be a seed," exclaimed Roo. "It's too big." "But it is a seed," said Rabbit, "and instead of flying, this seed floats when it wants to travel." Rabbit led Roo over to the brook. As Roo watched closely, Rabbit carefully placed the coconut in the water. It spun slowly for a moment, then floated off downstream. "What else do you have in that box?" Roo asked, poking his head inside. "I have a seed that doesn't fly or float," Rabbit replied. "It rides." Rabbit took out a cockleburr and placed it on the ground near some acorns. "Now watch," he whispered to Roo. Soon a squirrel came by, and sure enough, the cockleburr stuck to its fur. "Bye-bye, seed," waved Roo, as the squirrel and the seed disappeared into the woods. "Rabbit, why do seeds take trips?" Roo wanted to know. "Seeds need to find the right place to grow, especially one where there's lots of room," Rabbit explained. "So they just fly, float, or ride until they find it." Roo wanted to travel on his own more than ever. After all, didn't he need room to grow too? Thank you for showing me your collection, Rabbit, Roo called as he hopped towards Pooh's house. Pooh was just finishing off a jar of honey when Roo came pounding through the door. Pooh, Roo said breathlessly, have you ever noticed the way dandelion seeds travel? But Pooh, being a bear of very little brain, had not. Never mind, said Roo. What I was really wondering was whether you and I could fly your balloon. What a good idea, said Pooh. And so, while Roo waited impatiently, Pooh blew up the balloon. All set, Pooh announced as he took hold of the string. Yippee! Cried Roo, and he grabbed onto Pooh. Slowly, ever so slowly, they began to rise into the air. I'm flying, shouted Roo, just like a dandelion seed. If you don't mind, Roo, Pooh said, I prefer to think of us as a little black rain cloud. Whatever they were, they went floating up to a beehive. Time for a little smack roll of something, said Pooh, reaching into the hive. His paw came out dripping with honey. Smiling, he said, I always did like balloons. And then a bee buzzed above them, and there was a loud pop. A moment later, the two friends were back on the ground. Next to them was the balloon. The buzzing bee had burst. Pooh, licking his paw, didn't mind a bit, but Roo was disappointed. He got to his feet. Thank you for helping, Pooh, he said, but maybe flying isn't the best way for me to travel. Next, Roo went to visit Piglet. Piglet, Roo said earnestly, do you know that some seeds float? Was I supposed to know that? Piglet asked worriedly. No, said Roo, but do you remember the day it rained and rained and you had to leave your house in an upside-down umbrella? Yes, Piglet said, brightening. I remember that. Well, if you still have the umbrella, I'd like to use it, said Roo. Piglet, who always liked to be helpful, found the umbrella and gave it to Roo. There was some confusion when it appeared to be right side up. But then they remembered to turn it upside down and everything was fine again. They went to the stream and placed the umbrella in the water. Then they climbed in and floated away. I'm floating like a coconut, shouted Roo, jumping for joy. Jumping for joy is a fine thing to do, but probably not when you're floating in an upside-down umbrella. Suddenly, the umbrella was right side up, and Roo and Piglet were in the water. When they made it safely to the bank, Roo turned to his friend. Thank you for helping, Piglet, but maybe floating isn't the best way to travel. Roo went squishing off into the forest, and soon he came to the place where Eeyore lived. He found the old grey donkey eating a lunch of thistles. Eeyore, said Roo, did you ever notice how cockleburs stick to your fur and get a ride? How like them, said Eeyore in a low, sad voice. Eeyore went back to munching thistles. When he wasn't looking, Roo sneaked around behind him and climbed up on his back. Eeyore looked up a moment later, but Roo appeared to be gone. He left, said Eeyore glumly, but then they all do. He finished his lunch and moved slowly off through the forest. So did Roo. Roo tried to be very quiet, but he was too excited. I'm riding like a cocklebur, he whispered happily. Eeyore stopped and said, For a moment there, I thought I heard Roo. Oh well, I suppose my hearing isn't what it used to be. Once again, he plodded off through the forest. Roo was happy, but he was also very tired. He held on to Eeyore for as long as he could. At last he let go and dropped to the ground. Hello, Roo, said Eeyore. I was just thinking about you. Roo yawned. He stared. He started to think of a warm, snuggly place that was good for traveling. A place that was also good for afternoon naps. Thank you, Eeyore, he said, getting to his feet. You helped me most of all. I did? Asked Eeyore. Imagine that. Roo hopped back to Kanga as fast as he could. She kissed him and helped him into her pouch. Then she gave him a pat and bounded off. Inside, Roo smiled sleepily. He wasn't a dandelion, or a coconut, or a cockleburn. His friends had helped him to find that out, but he was Roo, with lots to see from his mama's pouch and lots of room to grow. Elmo gets homesick. Where are we going? Elmo asked his mommy as she packed his suitcase. Daddy is going with me on a business trip, said Mommy, and Daisy is going to camp, and you're going to visit Grandpa and Grandma. Oh, that's right, Elmo said happily. He'd forgotten just for a minute. You're a lucky monster, Daisy told Elmo. You get to visit Grandma and Grandpa all by yourself. I can't wait, said Elmo. Daddy, Mommy, Daisy and Elmo piled into the car and drove off to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Elmo counted all the red cars they passed, and Daisy counted all the blue ones. When the car drove up, Grandma and Grandpa rushed out to greet them. We're so glad to see you, they called. Where's my little Elmo? Asked Grandpa. Here I am, yelled Elmo. Grandpa gave him a big hug. Soon it was time for Mommy, Daddy and Daisy to leave. Daddy and Mommy kissed Elmo goodbye. You be a good little monster, said Mommy. We'll see you soon. Daisy hugged Elmo goodbye too. Elmo waved and waved until the car was just a tiny speck in the distance. Goodbye, he called softly. He had a shaky feeling in his tummy. Elmo dear, said Grandma, I'm making a batch of monster marshmallow cookies and I need some help. Okay, said Elmo. He loved helping Grandma make cookies, and marshmallow cookies were his favorite. Elmo ate 4 monster cookies and drank a glass of milk. Then he and Grandpa talked about all the things they would do together during Elmo's visit. They even made a list of Elmo's favorite things. After dinner, it was time for Elmo to go to bed. He always stayed in the room with a window that looked out on Grandpa's apple tree. Elmo put on his pajamas and brushed his teeth. Grandma tucked him in and sang Elmo his favorite song, Mary Had a Little Monster. Good night, little Elmo, said Grandma, giving him a kiss. Good night, Grandma, said Elmo, and he fell sound asleep. The next morning, Elmo woke up to the sound of a little bird singing in the apple tree. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. He wasn't in his own bed at home on Sesame Street. Good morning, sleepy monster, Grandpa said, as he came into Elmo's room and sat on the bed. It's a beautiful day. Let's get busy. But Elmo didn't feel like getting busy. What's the matter? Grandpa asked gently. I miss Mommy and Daddy and Daisy, Elmo said, and my own room and Big Bird and Barkley and all my friends. Elmo began to cry. It sounds like you're a little homesick, Grandpa told him, but I'll tell you a secret. What? Asked Elmo. When your daddy was a little monster, he used to get homesick too. He did? Asked Elmo. You'll be seeing your mommy and daddy and Daisy and all your friends soon, Grandpa reminded him. And you'll have lots to tell them about your visit. Elmo smiled. Come on, said Grandpa. Let's get busy doing those things on your list. So Grandma, Grandpa, and Elmo spent the next few days doing the things on Elmo's list. They went apple picking in an orchard, and Grandma baked an apple pie when they got home. Wait until I tell Cookie Monster about Grandma's homemade apple pie, said Elmo. They visited a family of kittens. Oh, said Elmo, Harry Monster loves kittens. I will tell him all about them when I get home. Elmo took his first ride on a pony. Boy, he said, if Daisy could only see me now. And he taught Grandpa how to play Monster Marble Maze. Gee, Grandpa, said Elmo, when I play with Bert, he always loses his marbles. One day, Grandpa showed Elmo the family picture album. Who is that? Asked Elmo. That's your great-grandfather Selmo, Grandpa said. He was an opera singer with the Metropolitan Monster Opera when he grew up. And here's a picture of your daddy when he was just your age. Whoa, said Elmo. The next morning the doorbell rang. Are you Mr. Elmo Monster? Asked Patsy the mail carrier as she reached into her mailbag. Yes, I am, said Elmo. I have a postcard for you, said Patsy. Elmo had never gotten his very own postcard before. Grandma read the postcard to him. Dear Elmo, she read, we are having fun, but we miss our little Elmo. We'll see you soon. Love, Mommy and Daddy. Grandpa had a postcard too. Your Mommy and Daddy are coming to take you home tomorrow, he told Elmo. Tomorrow, Elmo gasped, but we haven't done everything on my list. I know, said Grandma. You'll just have to come visit us again soon. I'm going to miss you, Elmo told Grandma and Grandpa the next morning when his parents were coming to get him. We'll miss you too, said Grandma. Then Elmo said, I can't wait to tell everybody on Sesame Street about all the things we did together.